What's up, guys? Hope you're all having a great day. Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Jonathan and I'm a clerical substitute in Austin, Texas. And as you can tell from the title of this video, today I'm addressing a very complex issue, which is racism in school. And we can all agree that racism is a major issue in modern day America, in the world. It's a major issue in the world, especially in the wake of all these recent deaths, George Floyd being the most impactful, and police brutality. But we're not going to talk too much about George Floyd or police brutality, as I am going to be speaking about racism in school, which could even prevent racism developing as we get older in life, as we experience more in life, how we can see from our very early days that racism is wrong. And the first thing I want to point out is elementary school. We all go to it, K through 5. We all learn math, English, social studies, science. In social studies, we learn about the civil rights movement. Excuse me. Dr. King, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We learn about the church bombing by the Ku Klux Klan and all sorts of hate crime that went on. We discuss the protests back in the 60s that eventually led to Reformation, and segregation came to an end. There was no more whites go to this restroom, blacks go to that restroom. There was no more of that. That came to an end. There was no more division. But did it really end? Did it really end is the question. We don't see signs anymore saying that, whites go to this restaurant, blacks go to this restaurant. We don't see signs. We don't see signs that say only white people can vote. We don't see signs like that. But we still feel the impact. Even though the signs are gone, their words are still engraved in our heads. It's like a stop sign at the end of a street. When you learn how to drive, you recall all the information, and you recall that at the end of a street, there you should stop when you see a stop sign. Well, by default, at the end of a street, even if there isn't a stop sign, by default, you still stop. Your brain is still saying, this is the end of a street, it's going into another street, stop and look for traffic. The signs of segregation have been taken down, but it's engraved in our minds, our memory, and our brain that people still believe those signs exist, even though you can't walk out to a public area and see them, even though they're not hanging anymore. People still assume that they're there, even though you can't see them anymore. And that is an issue in so many ways. And that is something we all learn when we're young. We learn right from wrong. We learn everything that we need to learn when we're young. And in regards to racism, when we're young, it depends on our environmental exposure. Are we living with people who are telling us to treat everyone around us equal and to only judge someone based on true morals? Are they really a good person? Or are they willing to, commit, terrible crimes? I mean, they teach you not to judge them by their skin tone or by their religion or cultural beliefs. And then there are parents or guardians out there who tell you, my mom and dad raised me not to trust people who are a different skin tone than myself. They tell you that. But if they don't tell their children, that may be how I was raised, but I don't want you to be raised in that fashion. I want you to understand that everyone is equal, and I, as an adult now, see the errors of my parents' way. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. A lot of bullying that goes on in school, believe it or not, deals with race. A lot of it deals with race. And it's something that's not acknowledged. Bullying is acknowledged, but the subject of the bullying, why is that person being bullied? That is not acknowledged. Now, if you identify the behavior as bullying, yes, obviously that is something important to acknowledge. But the fact that the topic at question isn't addressed, that students are being punished because they're being bullies, but they're not being told by an administrative official or by a parent why this particular topic is a form of bullying, why racism is not a form of bullying. There are several students out there who are of African American descent who still get called the N-word. In fact, a recent high school graduate I spoke to via DM on Instagram, she informed me that she and a group of her friends were called the N-word. And she talked to a school official who addressed the issue and told the particular individual not to say that again to him. That did not stop the problem. It happened again. And the girl I spoke to, she addressed the official offender and asked them, stop, please stop this. And again, they went to the administration, and the girl who was being offended, who was being called the N-word, was the one who was punished. So, we're going to punish a bully victim? Myself, as an educator, I look around and I think, are my coworkers going to punish a student based on their race? Or are they going to give them the benefit of the doubt? Why would you immediately jump to the conclusion that a student who is of African American descent, who told an administrative official that I was called the N-word, why are they the ones being punished? Why are they sent to in-school suspension? When the offender is still out there, probably calling other people the N-word. You see where I'm getting at? That students are not going to feel safe at school. Obviously, the first thing school officials want to do to make students feel safe, obviously, top priority, school shootings. School shootings have been a very sad part of history. Take Sandy Hook and Columbine, for example. And then there are instances of sexual assault and rape, particularly in high school environments. But the one thing that has not been addressed is racist acts. Verbal bullying that falls under the category of racist verbal harassment. So, why is nothing being done about that? Now, I understand schools are very big nowadays. They have huge populations. Some have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 students. And we're talking K through 12. We're not talking college. And I understand that the administration is probably thinking, we don't have time to focus on this one student. But this one student can be used as an example for the rest of the students, saying, this is a form of racial verbal harassment. And this happened to this student, or a student if the student wishes to remain anonymous. And this behavior will not be tolerated at this school. Now for me, I'm not an actual educator, I'm not an actual teacher, I'm just a sub for now. But something I will establish in my classroom when I do get my credentials and start actually teaching will be racist verbal harassment, automatic office referral. I don't care if it's a one-time thing, if it just, I don't care. Office referral immediately. If you do anything racist, if you call anyone the N-word, if you mock people due to their skin tone, if you make fun of an issue that is so significant and actually say, terrible things that if you said to a person of color in their face would make them very upset, that is unacceptable behavior. And that is behavior school officials need, not should, but need to start addressing. The sooner we learn, and the more we learn about racism at a younger age, the less likely events such as the death of George Floyd will occur. When we learn at a young age, that will be engraved in our mind. This is unacceptable behavior and that is never going to change. That will be engraved in our mind forever, for the rest of our lives. And the main problem is that in classes, like history classes, when you history and social studies and political science, classes where you learn about issues such as these, that you only have a certain amount of time to teach this subject. You're only I only have 2 weeks to discuss this subject. What all do I need to focus on? Well, you're spending 2 weeks discussing racism. Obviously, focus on racism. That's a big duh. But another thing that I looked at recently is that some parents think that schools are teaching students things that the parent would not want their student taught. Or that the parents are saying, this is a subject that needs to be taught to my child at school, but it's not being taught. Why? I don't have a clear answer to that. I can't personally say, that we need to reform the Board of Education to make education in racism mandatory, which I would greatly appreciate that. I think there should be, at some point, in elementary, middle, and high school where students have a significant lesson that lasts at least 2 or 3 weeks on how negative racism is, and that needs to stop, regardless of whether the parents approve of that or not. I think that should be, if that could be made into like a law or something, that is something I would vote for personally. If somehow we were able to create a law where it's mandatory to teach students about the history of racism and that it has not gone away, yes, that would be something I'm 100% going for. That's something I would definitely go for. But this needs to stop. This has been going on way too long. This is something that needs to be brought down to a minimum. There's always going to be at least one racist person in the world. I know racism is something that cannot be eradicated. It's a pandemic, just like coronavirus. We can't eradicate coronavirus, but we can reduce the number of cases. We can't eradicate racism, but we can reduce the amount of racist acts by addressing racism as a serious topic and taking it very seriously. And the best way to learn about racism is to teach the future generations about racism. Again, when you are young, and you're hearing for someone who is majoring in psychology here, okay? I'm majoring in psychology. You're hearing from me that, according to Erik Erikson, a famous psychologist, his stages of human growth and development, the younger we are, the more likely we are to more easily learn things and be able to more easily remember them. If we learn a second language at a young age, it'll be a lot easier to learn and a lot easier to remember. Learning how to ride a bike at a younger age, all those stereotypes of when you learn this when you're young, you won't have to learn when you're older. And it'll take less time and it'll be a lot easier for you. Same goes for racism. So, educate your kids. If you are a parent and you're watching this, educate your kids immediately. Tell them that this is not something that you're going to say, you'll learn more about this in high school. We'll tell you when you're older. Studies show kids learn about, normally kids get the birds and the bees talk when they're going out of middle school, entering high school. Nowadays, they're hearing it when they're in 3rd or 4th grade. Years before puberty, they are learning about sex from their parents. So why can't the same be for racism? Why leave the education of racism, this terrible thing, why leave it up to a teacher when you can teach your children? And if your child goes to school and tells their teacher, yeah, mom and dad already taught me this, that's good, because you're hearing it over and over and over again. How terrible it is. And how we can come together as a country, as a planet, and treat each other with equality. At the end of the day, the only thing that's different is our skin tone. That's it. If I were to cut myself, my blood is red. If an African American were to cut themselves, their blood is red. If a Hispanic or Latino person were to cut themselves, their blood is red. Doesn't matter what your skin tone is, your blood is red. You have a heart, you have lungs, you have a brain. You're identical in every single way except your skin tone. And that should not define who you are. Your skin tone should not be judged by people with different skin tones. It is unfair. It is disrespectful. It is, in my opinion, outrageous. I would be outraged to be judged based on my skin tone. And that would just be go against every moral I've ever been taught. To judge someone based on how they look. You don't judge a book by its cover. You don't judge a book until you finish reading it. You look at the cover, but you open the book up and you read it cover to cover. And at the end, that's when you say, this was a good book or this was a bad book. And I guarantee you, there are more good books out there, more good people out there than bad people. I guarantee that to you 110%. There are more good people in this world than bad people. And we need to start treating people equally. We need to stop racism. We need to address this. And we need to teach our children about this. Because the more they know, the more likely it is that they will grow up and end up being good books with good reviews, not bad books with terrible reviews. Thanks for watching.